Hello and welcome. My name's Angie Holden and I'm the blogger behind the Country Chic Cottage. I am so excited to introduce to you today a new product from Artesprix, and it is their Sublimation coloring books. Now, I'm going to show you sort of a wide variety of coloring books that they have, but I have one that I designed with a bunch of craft elements, and I'm going to use the one that I designed to make several different projects today, including some coffee mugs, keychain, luggage tag, few zipper pouches, tons of different project ideas with these coloring books. So if you do not have a sublimation printer and you have been wanting to try sublimation, a sublimation coloring book might be something you're interested in. If you just want to have sort of a crafty night with friends with sublimation and just want to sit and color or paint onto sheets and then sublimate them onto items and make it permanent, the coloring book could also be for you. So I feel like this new product offers up a lot to a lot of different people. So no matter if you have a sublimation printer or not, you might want to check out the sublimation coloring books. So the first thing we're going to do is take a closer look at the sublimation coloring book itself, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what this is. So let's take a look at the coloring book. Let's take a closer look at the sublimation coloring books. So this first one is the one that I designed, and it has a bunch of crafty designs. I'm going to primarily use this one in this video for my projects. However, on the Artesprix website, there are several different versions. There are versions with different alphabets. There's summer and travel, there's different themes. And within the themes, you also have like small, medium, large. So for instance, in this large summer and travel, the designs are larger for larger projects, whereas in the small summer and travel, the designs are smaller for smaller projects. So be sure to pick the theme you want as well as the size if you're choosing some of these other versions. The version that I designed has all kinds of crafty elements in it, and I made the pages a variety of ways. So there are some pages that have small designs, and there's 2 of each page so you can make multiple projects. And I also did a page with small designs, but sideways, and I'm going to use this page in this video for a mug. So I thought this would be great for mugs and tumblers. And then I took some of the elements and upsized them. So there are sort of medium and large elements all within the same coloring book so that you can make a wide variety of projects with just the single purchase. Now, any of these coloring books, they come like this because you're going to want to take these apart, right? We're going to color them, we're going to use them for projects. So you're just going to slide off the black piece. You can remove the clear covering, and you have your pages. Now the first page you cannot use for sublimation. So this is just a cover page. And also the last page you don't use for sublimation, it's just an end page. All of the middle pages are printed with sublimation ink on a sublimation printer, and they are all mirrored. So any text in these pages would be mirrored, and these are ready to color in and sublimate. Now, we are going to take a look at a variety of ways to color these in, but you do want to always use sublimation ink when coloring these pages in so that it will transfer to a sublimation blank. So for sublimation, if you're new to sublimation, you are going to need sublimation ink and a sublimation blank to put it on, or something with at least 65% polyester content. As long as we have those 2 things, this is going to work. So we have the sublimation ink already on this page, and anything we color onto it, we want to be sublimation ink as well. And now that you've seen a little bit more about the coloring book itself, I do want to walk you through the supplies we're going to use. Because if you're new to sublimation, it's going to be very important that you use sublimation ink for the rest of the process. And then also a sublimation blank is what you're going to need to put it on. So let's take a look at the supplies so you'll know exactly what you need to finish your project. So you have your sublimation coloring book and a few different options to color that in. The first would be sublimation markers, and this is probably going to be the most popular and more traditional way of coloring in your coloring book. However, Artesprix also makes sublimation stamp pads, ink refills for those stamp pads that you can use a variety of ways, as well as sublimation paint. So if you want to get creative with your sublimation coloring book, you can also incorporate some of these items. Other things that you're going to need to finish the project out. So you are going to need your sublimation blank, and then you'll need heat resistant tape, lint roller, heat resistant glove, heat resistant mat, protective paper, and some type of heat source. Generally, an iron is not recommended. In this video, I'm going to use an easy press as well as a Cricut mug press. So let's start by coloring our pages in. So I'm going to start with the page for my sublimation mug. Now this is a special mug that has a sublimation coating on the outside, and this is actually a Cricut brand mug. Now I don't need this whole page for this mug. I don't even need the whole page this way. I only need a portion of it. There's really no reason to color the entire thing unless you just feel like it and you want to use the rest of the page for something else. I mean, I might want to color the rest of the page in a different color scheme for another project. So I like to sort of save the rest of the page. So I'm gonna say about right here, I can stop coloring. So I'm just going to use a pair of scissors and I can sort of cut around these elements, and that way the bottom of the page I could use for another mug at a different time. And then the same thing for this way. Like, let's say that later on I have a smaller sublimation blank and I want to use this little piece over here. I can save it for another project just by kind of deciding how I want to wrap this around. So playing with it, I think I can cut off sort of this area here and save this for another project. And I may cut off some of this over here just so I can make sure, like, is this going to fit? And I do need some area for my mug press on both sides of the handle, and it does look like that this will fit. So now I have a piece that I need to color in. For this first project, I am going to use the sublimation markers. Now, put them tip down for a few hours before you start coloring, and that way they will be ready for you to color. And then I can literally just color this in like I would any other coloring page with the markers. Now, I do want to note here that the Artesprix markers, some of them are chisel tip and some are fine point, so you can definitely pick the pack that works best for you. I really like the chisel tip for manual coloring like this because I can use it broadly to color in large areas, and I can turn it up and sort of have a fine point to do other smaller areas as I'm coloring. So that's my preference, but if it's not yours, you can definitely use the fine point. Just be sure that you're using sublimation markers here, and I'm using the Artesprix sublimation markers for this. Once you have the coloring done on the entire thing, you do want to make sure that it dries before you press it. So I'm going to set this aside and we're going to work on some of the other products from Artesprix and how to use them with a coloring book. I'm going to sublimate this zipper pouch, and I'm going to use this coloring sheet. Now, I want to do sort of an all over pattern here, but the sheet isn't quite big enough to cover the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is trim this where there's sort of an outline around the outside edge is what I'm thinking. And I'm not being exact with this. And what I'm going to do, I think, is sort of rip the edges so this entire thing will look intentional. Even though it doesn't exactly fit around the edge, it'll look very intentional if we kind of rip the edges with the technique that we're going to use to add ink to this. So there's that piece all ripped around the edge, and as you can see, it'll sort of fit inside of the zipper pouch. For this technique, I have a bowl of just water, and I have the stamp ink refills from Artesprix, and literally just drop some ink into this bowl. Does not matter how much. You can do a little bit, you can do a lot, and you'll start to see sort of patterns on the surface. I'm gonna add one more drop of pink to just break that purple up a little bit, maybe 2 drops. And now I have some really cool effects. You could even use a popsicle stick here to stir around in this if you would like, and then you're just going to take that print from the coloring book, and we're just gonna kind of dip it into this water, completely covering it. And now, if any part of this, if you don't like the look of it, you can re-dip it. Now, this is extremely wet. We're going to set it aside and allow it to dry completely before continuing. Next project is going to be a luggage tag, and I already cut a piece of the sublimation coloring book to fit this. You'll just need some paint brushes and the sublimation paint. Now the sublimation paint comes in a wide variety of colors, and there's also a lightening medium. So I do want to be clear that the lightening medium is not sublimatable. So there is no such thing as white sublimation, but you can use this to lighten other colors. Now this paint goes a very long way, so I've added pink, purple, and blue. And for instance, the blue is a little bright for me. I would rather have a pastel blue. So I can add the lightening medium to that blue and then just mix that up to get a much lighter color. And now you just paint this like you would any other paint onto the page. So I can just start painting parts of this little scrap here with whatever colors I would like. Now the black should show through because it should be on top, but this is going to be our experiment piece, right? Because we are going to put paint, and I'm just going to go right over the top. Now I do light coats of this paint. I just like the look of a light coat. You could definitely go darker if you wanted to. I just like a really light coat with this paint, and then it dries really fast. So I'm just going to paint this entire piece here. And now we'll just set this aside and allow it to dry. And I'm going to do another zipper pouch with a different technique. So I have this large Cricut machine print here from the Sublimation coloring book. And I have a couple of stamp ink pads in pink and purple. And then I just have these brushes that I'm just going to sort of rub the ink on with them. This is not going to be a perfect method. So if you wanted it perfect, you would color it in or paint it. But for an imperfect method, that might be fun. We can just sort of rub the ink onto the paper and maybe just vary it up. And so a little pink, a little purple, and just sort of make a really cool effect with this ink. And I'm not even worried about staying in the lines with this one. It's going to be a little freeform, and we'll just see how this one turns out. But this is another option to use the stamp ink pads along with the coloring book. Now, this method dries almost instantly, so this is basically dry. However, you might want to let it dry a little bit before you press it. Let's press the mug first. The mug press is heating up. I'm just going to clean the mug well. Then you're going to apply the piece of the coloring page that you colored with those sublimation markers. Once you get it located onto the mug, we're just going to tape it down. And you do want the print really tightly secured to the mug. Then I just like to protect my press with just a piece of protective paper, just to make sure I don't get any ink on the press. I feel like this is especially important when you're using things like these sublimation markers, sublimation paint, etc., is to be sure to use that protective paper. Once the mug press is heated up, I'm just going to put the mug inside, close it up. And this doesn't even need a timer or anything. The Cricut mug press is very easy. As soon as the dots go all the way across, it will beep and the mug will be ready. Once that's done, you can lift that, and the handle should be cool. So I'm gonna set that on a heat resistant mat to cool off a little bit. Then you can just remove the protective paper as well as that sublimation print. And you can see just how great this looks. And yes, the black sublimated as well as what we use those markers on. You can see just how good it looks. Now, if this print sticks at all anywhere, like it's ripping a little bit in this area, we're just gonna wet that with some water and that will come right off. It does not affect the sublimation at all. So I'll just get off everything I can and then use some water to get the rest of this off, and then we can take a look at how great this mug looks. Now I just used like a wet cloth and got most of that sublimation print off of this version. I went ahead and made another mug because I wanted to show you something. So this was the first mug I made, and the sublimation markers, you store them flat. And when you want to use them, you need to put them upright and do tip side down. I had done that for about 30 minutes to an hour when I colored this version. So the colors of this version are very light, very pastel. Then I used those same exact markers, left them tip down overnight, and did this version. The colors are way, way different. So if you are struggling with markers and your colors aren't as vibrant as you think they should be, leave them tip down for longer. However, if you want a more pastel look, you can just leave them tip down for like an hour and go ahead and color in your coloring book and get a different look. So this is a couple different looks with the same set of markers. Now for this glitter pouch, this page is dry and it's ready to press. I'm gonna start by pre-pressing the fabric just a little bit, just sort of removing any moisture from it. Then you can lint roll to clean it off. I'm gonna unzip this, put one piece of protective paper inside, add the print that's all sublimation ink now to the pouch. And hold it down with just a couple pieces of heat resistant tape. Then I am gonna cover this with another piece of protective paper. You do wanna be careful with this ink because it can go everywhere. Be sure to use your protective paper. And I'm gonna put my Easy Press where it's not on this zipper at all, so it sits directly onto that zipper pouch. And I'm gonna press 380 degrees for 60 seconds. Then we'll lift that up. I'm gonna remove protective paper, and then we can remove the sublimation print. Now, if this print sticks more than you're used to, that is because of the sublimation ink they use for the coloring book, and you just need to peel it away. And I'm just gonna kind of check, and everything looks really good, so I'm gonna go ahead and peel this off. And as you can see, this is hot, we have a gorgeous glitter zipper pouch with a crafty print. Next, I'm gonna press a luggage tag with the piece that we added the paint onto, and I'm just gonna locate this onto the luggage tag, secure with some tape. Then I'm gonna put some protective paper over the top, and this one is 380 degrees, 60 seconds. Then we'll lift up. Then just peel back the sublimation print, and that is so adorable on the luggage tag. Now I'm just going to do another zipper pouch with the print, and this is dried just a few minutes. Again, go ahead and preheat a little bit. Lint roll it off, unzip, add protective paper inside. Go ahead and add our Cricut machine print here. Add a few pieces of tape to tape that down well. Cover that with a piece of protective paper, and I'm going to press 380 degrees, 60 seconds. Once that's done, we'll lift it up. Go ahead and just check and see. And that looks amazing. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel this up and have a cute zipper pouch all ready to go to store your Cricut supplies. Finally, I did color a few more just small pieces. I just wanted to do like a hardboard blank, and so I have a keyring blank here. Just go ahead and clean that off. If there's any protective film, you will need to remove that. I'm gonna do both sides of this. So one side, I'm gonna have my paintbrush and my paint palette, and the opposite side, we'll see if I can squeeze these on here. Just add a few bottles, and I think that's a weeding hook. Tape both sides into place, then add protective paper front and back. And I'm gonna press this one 380 degrees for 90 seconds, flip it, and do 90 more seconds. Once that's complete, we'll just lift that up. And then you can just remove this sublimation print from both sides. And you have a cute keychain. I want to test out the rest of what Artesprix has to offer. So whether you want to use the paint on your coloring book page, now with the paint I would recommend a very light coat to get the look I got here. You could also use the ink pads, so the ink pad themselves is what I used for this one, and the refill ink is what I used for this one. So no matter which of the Artesprix inks you choose, I think that you're really going to love your results with this coloring book, and I hope you will pick up a coloring book and give it a try for yourself. So now I walked you through making several projects. I did want to note that one of these coloring books, say like the one I made, I used it to make all the projects you saw on the screen, plus some other projects when I was testing it out. Plus I have a bunch more sheets that I could use to make more projects. So this is not just a one project and done type of coloring book. You can definitely purchase one coloring book and make several different projects. The projects I made were all fairly small, however. The larger the project you make, obviously, the fewer you can make with the coloring book. But a small project, like if you're gonna make keychains or luggage tags or something like that with your friends, then the coloring book will go a really long way once you're cutting those sheets apart into little individual pieces and using them on tons of small projects. Now, I have linked to all the supplies that I've used in the description below this video. Remember, it is going to be very important that you purchase your Sublimation coloring book. It already is made with special ink, and then you are going to use special markers or special paints or special stamp ink to color that in. Always remember that you need sublimation ink during every part of that process. And then you'll also need a sublimation blank to put it on. So a specially coated blank or something that is made out of at least 65% polyester. So if you had a shirt that was made out of 65% polyester, you could use it for projects like I've shown you here. However, you do need sublimation ink and a sublimation blank or polyester in order to make this entire process work. And when I link to those supplies, that includes the coloring book that I designed, which of course I highly recommend. However, I did show you that they have other coloring book designs, way more than even I showed you, and I'm sure they will be adding more. So you can pick up the other ones that they have or the one that I designed, either way, but be sure to pick up a sublimation coloring book for yourself and give it a try. Now, if you have any questions about sublimation coloring books or anything that I covered today, please feel free to drop down to the comment section and ask away. If you like this video and it helped you, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, head on over to my YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. I have videos just like this one every single week, and trust me, you don't want to miss any of those. So thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.